As some of you correctly guessed in last week's top 5 videos comment section, yes, we are going over my top 5 still ships that I do not recommend you pick up with your 32,000 free still if you choose to go that route during the Grand Voyage and the 10th anniversary events. So just to be clear here at the start, I think the vast majority of steel ships are actually really good. There's just some that I wouldn't, if I can only get one, I wouldn't go after, this particular one first for a variety of reasons, which we'll get through as we get to each of the ships in this list. But again, most of these ships on this list, I think they're actually really good. And yeah, you should eventually pick them up if you can, but definitely not ships that I would pick on my first round of picking up a steel ship. Again, I do apologize if I sound a little weird or off. I am deathly ill yet again. School's back in session. I went in as a good teacher does, and now here I am sick. So I apologize if I sound a little off during this video, but hey, can't really do too much about that. I'm basically topped off on Benadryl at the moment anyway. But anyway, let's go ahead and get on into it. Coming in at number 5, we have a technicality here. Not really a still ship, but any coal ship. So if you don't know, you can exchange steel for coal in the armory at a rate of 1 to 10. So 1 steel equals 10 coal. So naturally, a lot of players, when they saw that, hey, we're getting 32,000 free steel, many thought, well, I can, exchange that for a coal ship, right? And yes, you can, but I would highly discourage you from doing so. Why? Well, like I said in the intro to this video, steel ships, the vast majority of them, are very good. And it's exceptionally hard to come by steel normally. You can normally only acquire it during ranked and clan battles, and sometimes during the dockyard. If you pay your way through the dockyard, you can go back, complete those missions, and then acquire steel that way. But it's the only resource that Wargaming's been very picky about releasing in any large numbers, outside of course, this 10th anniversary event. So I know there's definitely, a big draw to say, hey, I've been running that Napoli. I haven't really been getting as much coal as I would really like to get in, but I really want that Napoli. I can, use this steel and exchange it for the Napoli instead. Don't do that, because you can use this steel to get one free premium ship, and you can turn around and just grind out coal normally to get a second free premium ship, right? Coal's way easier to come by. You can get the 3 daily coal containers, and yes, it does take a while through just getting coal from the 3 daily coal containers, but you will get it in a few months if you just get the 3 daily coal containers. Plus, there's combat missions, events, brawls, sometime for rank 2, you can get coal in those modes, and Wargaming gives out a hell of a lot more coal than they do steel. So if you're thinking about getting a coal ship with your steel, I highly discourage you from doing so. I understand it's very tempting, but if you ever have an inkling to get any of the steel ships, you want to save that steel for when you can get that steel ship. So that's number 5 out of the way. On our way down now to number 4, we have the tier 10 Japanese battleship Shikishima. Now, before y'all start lynching me in the comment section, the Shikishima is a great ship. I love the Shikishima. It's in S tier, my battleship video, because it is very good. I love the sound. The sound is so therapeutic of those main battery guns ripping, and it's a wonderful ship. However, the cold hard truth at the end of the day is that, well, there's nothing really that the Shikishima does that the Yami doesn't do. And the Yami is a tech line ship, so it's free without having to grind through ranked or clan battles or whatever to get this steel. Like, they literally do the same thing. They're both back of the map, long-range snipers with the same hull, the same armor layout. The Shikishima has a slightly different set of AA and secondary guns that used to be very, very good back in the day before they had the Commander rework. But now, after that change, after changes to the secondary skills and such, it's just like a Yami that can overpin a little bit more, but it doesn't overmatch anything important that the Yamato doesn't. Like, the Yami can pin 32 millimeters of armor. That's the last major threshold in the game, which means she can get through the bows and stern of pretty much any tier 10 ship down, right? The Shikishima, I think it goes up to like 35 millimeters maybe, but nobody has a 35 millimeter nose or stern. There's like a couple of deck plates here and there that you can overmatch that the Yami can't, but it's nothing important. And with the Yami, you're throwing 9 shells at the target instead of 6 shells at the target like the Shikishima does. And yeah, sure, the Shikishima has incredible accuracy, battlecruiser accuracy on those main battery guns, but like with 20-inch guns, you're going to be overpinning A lot, a lot. And, you know, what's funny about the Shikishima is when you get that one shell that connects and, you know, you rip them for like, was it 19,000 damage with one shell hitting a citadel? That's what makes the Shikishima funny, you know? And, of course, when the stars align and all 6 of those shells impact the enemy ship's citadel, but, like, Yami does that too. There's so many clips out there of the Yami one-shotting broadside battleships and cruisers, you know, because it's the Yami. So, again, the Shikishima, I love her. The sound of the main battery guns is amazing. She's a really fun ship to play, but when you've got something in the tech tree that does exactly the same thing that this ship does, but it doesn't cost you any steel, I'd recommend getting that first. And again, there's better ways you can spend your steel than getting a Shikishima with it. Now, if you've been wanting a Shikishima, you've been dreaming about getting a Shikishima, by all means, get a Shikishima. This is just my 2 cents on the ships that you shouldn't waste your steel on. So going down for number 4, we have in our number 3 slot the Tier 10 Soviet cruiser, the Komissar. Now the Komissar is a ship that I know it's pretty good and it's well received by the community, but I just don't like the way it plays. Like, you get 12 240mm guns on a cruiser, which those are very large guns to have that many of them on a cruiser. You get the Soviet bias AP with all the improved shell ballistics and whatnot, and you get the improved pin angles on those AP shells, which, yeah, that's very, very appealing. So, you know, when you have those slightly angled and broadside cruisers, you can absolutely delete their health bar with the Komissar's AP. That's good and all, but because of, well, the way the rest of the ship is, if you haven't noticed, this is a very, very long cruiser. She very much reminds me of the the mid-tier Soviet cruisers and such, and that's really, you know, what she plays like. You sit in the back, look for those broadside cruisers or broadside battleships, you know, pin the crap out of them with your AP shells and such, and it's like, okay, cool and all, you know, I guess it's more of an AP focused long-range cruiser than, you know, like the ton of HE focused long-range spammy cruiser that we have nowadays, right? But she has another trick up her sleeve, and that she is a hybrid ship. So you get a flight of the Soviet rocket planes, and again here, you know, it's pretty good. It's the Soviet HE rockets. They do good alpha damage, have a good fire chance, and all that jazz. So, you know, it does very much, again, you know, work in that, sit in the back of the map, shoot at broadside things for a long range away because of your, you know, excellent shell ballistics and such, and then send up your planes every once in a while and, you know, set things on fire. She even has 10-kilometer torpedoes, which is pretty much unheard of on Soviet cruisers. Most Soviet cruisers have like 4-kilometer torps, really just self-defense torps. So, you know, everything about this ship is geared to be played at long range. It's a really good kiter, don't get me wrong. I just don't really like the way it plays. It's never really clicked with me. And if this was like, you know, the only Soviet cruiser in the Armory for Steel, sure, why not get it? But the fact remains is that you could get this thing, which is pretty good, and again, a lot of people love it, or you can get the Stalingrad, you know, the poster child for Russian bias. Get those amazing main battery guns, the tankiness of a battleship, radar, you know, so many more things that makes the Stalingrad a better pick for like competitive and such, although apparently Komissar has been showing up in competitive a bit, well, at least when she came out, because, you know, you get the spotting from the hybrid planes and such. But that's something too, with how much is changing with the aircraft, with the CV rework on the horizon. You don't really know if those planes are going to continue to be pretty good like they are right now, with, you know, what's to hold, with what the future is to hold, right? So, you know, again, it's not a bad ship. I just don't like the way it plays, and when it's this or the Stalingrad for your first Soviet still ship, I very much encourage you to get the Stalingrad over the Komissar. Again, not hating on the ship, I just don't enjoy the way it plays. Alright, going our way down now to number 2, we have the Tier 10 American submarine, the Gato, or Gato. I think it's Gato. So the Gato, this is a very interesting ship. This was a terror of the ocean when she first came out all those years ago, back when shotgunning was still a thing with submarines. You know, you basically get a rack of gearing torps in the front, and you could, you know, walk up to enemy ships like 2 kilometers away and just, you know, dump an entire gearing rack of torps worth into their broadside, and then you can submerge and sail away laughing and chuckling to yourself as the enemy team tried to desperately depth charge you and such. It was most certainly a ship back in the day. But with the way submarines are played, it's some submarines are very interesting. They're kind of like, not kind of, they are very much like RTS CVs, where if you are not an expert in a submarine, you're probably going to either die early or live long enough to do nothing. Like, it's such an unforgiving class. If you goof up, you get spotted, and now the enemy team is carpet bombing your location with depth charges. Yeah, you're going to have a very bad time. You're probably going to be sent back to port just like that. But with the Gato, it was a pretty simple gameplay loop. You walk up to the enemy ship, dump a bunch of torpedoes into their side, and then leave, right? But of course, we got the 3-kilometer arming range added onto submarines. Good lord, what was that, like 2 years ago now at this point? So you can't really do that with the Gato anymore. So now the Gato is more just like, very stealthy gearing with one rack of torpedoes. Which, again, it still does very much work. You go to a flank, you throw torpedoes at the enemy ships. You can still, get reasonably close, like 7-ish kilometers, and dump them, but that's much further than, obviously, the 2 kilometers you used to be able to pull this off at back in the day. So it still does very much work, but yet again, like the Komissar, if you want a Tier 10 American submarine, there's one that's a lot better than the Gato, and that is the Archerfish. Archerfish is one of the most cracked ships that have been released here recently. Like, the ship has combat instructions for submarines, it has player-controlled deck guns that fire sap, it's got just all this goofiness about it. Like, you can go 40 knots at periscope depth with the Archerfish, which is just absurd for a submarine to be that stealthy, still be able to spot, and still be able to dump torpedoes on the enemy team. So, again, if you're looking for, a Tier 10 American submarine, Gato, not bad, just, if you're not a submarine player too, obviously I wouldn't recommend getting the Gato or the Archerfish or any, submarine that you don't have enough experience in to really know what you're doing. But, yeah, if you're looking for a submarine, get the Archerfish instead. Gato's cool and all, but Archerfish is where it's at nowadays. Alright, finally we come to our number 1 slot, which is occupied by the Tier 10 American aircraft carrier, the FDR. Now, the FDR is a ship that was, man, when this thing came out, God, it was so broken. And it's still very strong today, too, don't get me wrong, but it's not what it once was. This thing, you could easily firebomb the living crap out of an enemy battleship or a large cruiser back in the day, and, hit them for like 26,000 damage, set a couple of fires on them, and just make their day miserable. Then you can follow it up with your torpedoes. They're going to do another 20,000 plus damage to the enemy ship, and you can basically pull a U-turn with the FDR's torpedoes, right? Between those two set of aircraft alone, you could just bully the enemy team. And the aircraft had a ton of HP and armor, so they last forever. I think there's a video on the channel of me in an Ohio getting like 100,000 plane damage to FDR planes. I think I shot down like 2 of them or something ridiculous like that because of how goofy the amount of HP the FDR's planes have is. So that's a little dumb. Now, a lot has changed since the FDRs came out. A lot of global changes, a lot of changes to the way, the CV's reticle works, a lot of changes to AA and how planes and AA interact and such. And the FDR has called a couple of direct nerfs here and there along the way. They nerfed the HP of the planes not that long ago. Not only did they nerf the aircraft's HP, they also nerfed the amount of damage that the bombs and torpedoes did. They increased the spread on the torpedoes and such. So it's still a very strong carrier, but you really have to know what you're doing with it nowadays. It's a lot less forgiving than back in the day where you could get this and just bully the crap out of the enemy team. Heck, I was a pretty big FDR bullier back in the day when I had this ship, and that's me. I am terrible at CVs, but even I can make it work back in the day and such. And yet again, there's a much better choice for a still CV if you want a still CV, and that is the Shirano. It is so much better than the FDR in today's World of Warships. That's the one I would pick up if I was you guys. So guys, that is it for today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz. Tell me what still ships you are not worrying about picking up in this event. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful Monday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.